What is going on, everyone? This is Miles with Windows Central Gaming, and welcome to the 60th episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined once again by Windows Central's very own Samuel Tolbert. Sam, how you doing on this fine Saturday, my dude?
I am doing really well, Miles. My vacation ended just actually 12 hours ago to the minute. So that's actually pretty good. Like, not even a day, folks. Miles doesn't let me, like, rest up for too long.
No.
Halfway through my vacation, he's like, hey, Sam, you want to come on? It's like, yeah, all right, sure. I'm not taking any other work messages, but, like, I'll make time for you, Miles. That's good. We
Appreciate
can do
you.
that.
I know you and I are both coming off the back of vacations, well earned,
Yeah, yeah.
because this year has been a doozy for video games in a really good way. Obviously, we've had huge titles like Elden Ring, Tunic just dropped. There's been a lot of amazing games to play, which is exciting, but that also means a lot of work for us on the games media side of things. So I am stoked to hear that you took some time, and you actually took some time. It wasn't one of those vacations where you were looking at Slack, jumping in to see what's going on. You were disconnected and enjoying life. I love to
Yeah.
hear that.
Happens every now and again. Happens. But we got some big stuff to talk about today.
We do. It's been a week. It's been a week. No news in general has been kind of slow, but we've got some big developments from Xbox Game Studios, The Initiative, Perfect Dark. We're going to be talking about Supermassive's new game, which I'm very excited to have you on to dive into that. We're going to be talking about basically the current state of Xbox Game Studios. We want to hear your concerns as members of the community about Xbox Game Studios. We're going to be talking about Elden Ring sales. Of course, we got to talk about Elden Ring. Every single episode this year has to have a segment dedicated to Elden Ring. So this is no exception, and so much more. But before we get into all of that, Sam, let the people watching and listening know who you are and where they can find you.
Yeah, so if you somehow haven't caught me on here before, my name is Samuel Tolbert, freelance writer over at Windows Central and good friend of Miles. We work together on a lot of different stuff, a lot of different projects. We actually joined Windows Central at like basically the same time. We were going through training together, filling out paperwork at the same time. Pretty wild, back in July 2019. So that was cool. You can find me on Twitter at Samuel Tolbert. Come yell at me for my opinions. I love it. I eat that stuff up. And yeah, good to be here.
All right, some quick housekeeping before we get into the show topics today. If you are digging the audio versions of the show, do us a huge favor, follow the show and leave us a review. We're a little late to the audio versions, but it helps get it out to more folks. So again, if you are listening after the fact and not live on youtube.com, leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. With that being said, let's dive straight into the first topic, and one, again, I'm stoked to have you on, and that is Supermassive's new horror title called The Quarry. So in kind of a bombshell announcement from out of nowhere, Supermassive, the creators of Until Dawn, came out and said, bam, here's our new game. It comes out in like 3 months. You can play this June 10th, and it looks to be a spiritual successor of Until Dawn, a campy 80s slasher-inspired horror film with a banger cast. David Arquette, Lynn Shay, Lance Henriksen, Ariel Winters, and so much more. They've always been known for having that kind of star power and merging the gap or bridging the gap between video games and movies. And The Quarry seems to be further proof of that. So, Sam, what are your initial impressions of what we've seen of the little bits and pieces of The Quarry so far?
Okay, Miles. So anyone who knows me knows I love Until Dawn. I personally think Until Dawn is one of the best PlayStation exclusives of the PS4 generation. I think it is a masterpiece of cheesy horror, a choose your own like adventure that like, hey, do you want to have all the dumb teenagers die off or do you want them to actually have brains unlike most horror movies and you can just do it whichever way you want.
Mhm.
Everyone can live, everyone can die. Actually a surprisingly good plot and ending, which is very difficult to do in horror. I think Until Dawn is a masterpiece. And, Supermassive has been doing these shorter little choose your own adventure scary stories called the Dark Pictures Anthology. I don't really hate them, but they haven't hit the same note. They haven't
Yeah.
been as good. They're all like very bite-sized, so they have to cram a lot more in. They have to tell a very fast-paced story. Some of them haven't been that satisfying. Full disclosure, I have not played the latest one, House of Ashes. I hear it's better. than Man of Medan and Little Hope, but you know. So the fact that we're getting an actual spiritual sequel to Until Dawn, like no, not shoving it in, not part of an anthology, just this is the full-fledged deal. Yes, I'm in day one. This, everything about this, the stacked cast, the size of the game, the fact that it's only coming out in like 3 months. Please, I know game development is hard. I get it. I really get it. I understand. Take your time. But there is something beautiful about a game being announced and then, oh yeah, it's you're gonna play it later this year, and not even like late this year. You're playing it in a few months. It's coming real soon. We're coming in hot. Like I love that. I miss that. More games do that, please, please. No, the Quarry looks like my jam, 100%.
It is such a treat to have that moment where you see something that you didn't expect, you didn't know this game was coming, to have it revealed, and then to have that moment where they hit you with the date. And it is a short time away. Kirby in the Forgotten Land, when when that dropped and they revealed this big open Kirby game, the Kirby game that I've been wanting for a long time, and like 6 months, dude, and you're playing this. I'm like, what? What? There's something, like you said, so special about it. And I get that, with big games, it's used as kind of a recruitment tactic in this day and age to drop it
Sure.
early. And I get the reasons for doing it, but like you said, there is something magical and special about seeing something you want and knowing you don't have to wait that long to play it. So you and I, both big horror nerds, seeing Ted Raimi
Ooh,
that was such that's how you know.
Lance Henriksen. Come
Yeah,
on, like,
that's how
come
you know
on.
Supermassive Games gets horror and loves horror, because they go out of their way. Lynn Shay, the ultimate scream queen, the legend,
Mm.
seeing her in this. Oh, it warmed my heart. And like you said, the Dark Picture series has not been bad. They've been fine, but it hasn't lived up to the Until Dawn
No.
experience. And this looks to be their kind of attempt to go back to that well and reimagine what that could be. And it's got a big publisher involved. So, here's to hoping that it's polished, it's well produced, and it comes out of the gate strong. And like you said, just a few months away, dude. Oh,
Oh yeah. My birthday is actually June 18th, so this is like I consider this an early birthday gift. I'm claiming it. That's how I'm
Supermassive.
gonna
Like, here you
take
go,
this.
Sam.
Yeah,
Happy birthday.
exactly.
The summer
Exactly.
blockbuster, The Quarry, dropping
Yeah.
hot.
Summer game releases, that too. More games. Please release in June and July. They exist. Come on.
Yeah, it is weird and cool to see summer releases be a normal thing now. For a long period of time, I think gaming was more marketed towards kids. Let's be real,
Mhm.
teens,
Sure.
and it was always weird that they didn't take advantage of kids being off for summer and just dump a bunch of games during summer break. But yeah, for the most part, developers and publishers avoided summer like the plague, because what,
Mhm.
kids are going outside? Ugh, no thanks.
Why would you do that?
No, what?
There's mosquitoes. I live in South Carolina. There's mosquitoes out there. It's hot. Like no.
Sun and exercise? No, no. Just dump games so I don't have to leave my house ever. All right. So, like you
100%.
said, happy to see more summer releases. Sam, Until Dawn, that
Right.
had an interesting twist, had
Right.
an interesting kind of main focus with the Wendigos. Um,
Right. Right.
do you have any predictions for what the creature or conflict of the quarry might be based on the small bits that we've seen?
Right. So emphasis on small bits because we've only got that one trailer so
Yes.
far, and a
Yes.
lot of that trailer, understandably, was just dedicated to showing off the cast. So working with what we've got, I actually rewatched the trailer right before I hopped in Discord and we went live again, and I got a theory. So in Until Dawn, obviously spoilers for a 7-year-old
Yes.
game.
Spoiler
Come
alert.
on, expiration date on that, y'all. Come on, let's keep it real. It was set up initially to seem like a slasher, where there's like a serial killer, Michael Myers-esque kind of villain
Yes.
hunting down. But in reality, the Wendigo are the real threat. I think we're going to see something similar with the Quarry. I think it's going to be set up that there's some sort of like crazy cannibal, some guy out there hunting the teenagers in the woods. But in reality, I think we're getting a pack of werewolves.
Oh,
I'm,
werewolves.
I'm
Okay.
not. I don't have much. I don't have much to work with. But in almost every shot where the game is set outside, there's a full moon, a big, bright full moon over the forest of New York. I Come on. I know it's not a lot to go on, but I believe in it. I'm willing it into existence.
Okay,
But
that is an interesting theory. Like you said, Until Dawn does a great job of subverting your expectations, making you think it's going to be the classic Michael Myers trope, the Jason
mm,
trope, where it's just a slasher, crazed dude in the woods killing
mhm.
teens. But towards the end, you realize that it is something much more sinister, and I have to imagine the Quarry is going to do something and give us
Yeah.
something we don't expect. And if they can do that again, I'm going to be very, very happy. Werewolves is an interesting development and one that I'll be honest, I wasn't even thinking about. I did notice the full moon, but I thought that was more like, oh, that's just horror. That's a horror trope. Let's just throw the full
It
moon
could
in.
be. It could be. Sure. That's totally
But
possible.
that is interesting. That would be an interesting wrinkle in this formula here. But again, we won't have to wait that long to find out, Sam.
Mhm.
I'm gonna give a quick shout out to all the amazing people joining us. I see Eternal Umber in the chat. I see you, Donnie. I see Mr. Joanna Dark. I see 210 who says hashtag no more Elden Ring talk, which is a beautiful segue into our next segment, which is Elden Ring sales. Sam, we got to talk about it because we've been speculating on this, or I have, for quite some time about how
Mhm.
Elden Ring might land. Because I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that Elden Ring was From Software's biggest game. The marketing
No.
push for it has been huge. There's George R.R. Martin involved of Game of Thrones fame. It's been marketed more as a kind of high fantasy RPG than the gritty Souls likes
Mhm.
of the past. But I don't think I'm alone when I say that I was not expecting 12 million copies in 2.
No. No,
That
absolutely not.
that is an enormous milestone that is blowing away all of the expectations of Bandai Namco and FromSoft. For context here, Dark Souls 3 took about 4 years to hit 10 million copies sold. Bandai Namco was expecting 4.3-ish million copies in the first
Mhm.
4 weeks. So in 2 weeks they have tripled their expectations for this game, and it stands as one of the biggest Japanese developed launches of all time. So, Sam, I asked Jez this earlier this week on Checkpoint. I've asked a ton of people. Given the figures that we know so far, where the hell is this game going to end 2020 at? How many copies is this selling this year?
Okay, I mean, for context, Miles, I thought we were going to hit 10 million for Elden Ring by the end of the year. That's what
Same,
I thought. And
same,
I thought
same.
that was an aggressive guess. I thought Dark Souls 3 took how many years to sell 10 million? Yeah, Elden Ring will do it in a year. It's their biggest game yet. Wow, talk about like not being wrong about it being their biggest game yet, but just doesn't quite capture the enormity, the gravity of the situation here. No, Miles, I legitimately think that 18 million by the end of the year is possible.
Yeah,
I think Elden Ring will hit 18 million by the end of the year. I think FromSoft has just hit this point where you're not hard. It's not just the hardcore who are buying in. This is anecdotal as all heck, but I know people who just subscribe to Game Pass and they buy Call of Duty. That's it. That's all they do. Like they'll play something if it's on Game Pass and they'll buy the new Call of Duty. They don't play any other games. They're buying Elden Ring. They're trying it out. They're looking up builds. They're sharing stuff. They're sharing like the secrets they find. Like it's a similar situation to what happened actually with Monster Hunter World back in
oh
January
yeah,
2018,
yeah.
where this game where it just blew up and tapped into this audience that kinds of games. I think there's a lot of factors. I think George R. R. Martin, obviously his name, maybe not as much as it used to, but it definitely still carries some cachet, carries some, weight to the marketing. I think the fact that Elden Ring has had a longer hype cycle because of the pandemic extending development, so there was that period where what's going on? Where is Elden Ring? I think that definitely hyped things up a bit. And then as for what else it is, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what the last part of that equation is, but Elden Ring is massive and nothing can stop it at this point. No,
It's
18 million by the end of the year, easily.
I'm going to go one further. I'm going to say 20 million because I was in a similar
Ooh,
camp. I
ooh,
said I was expecting 5 million copies opening weekend and then 10 million
sure.
copies in the first year, but to see them
Mm,
hit 12 million and to see people consistently keep playing it, because there were concerns from people that a lot of people would buy into the hype of this and then just drop off the game. Looking at
right,
my friends
right.
list on Xbox, I don't think anyone has less than 15 hours in this, which is
Well,
wild.
not only that, Miles, but I gotta interrupt. I think there's some data recently that almost 70% of players have beaten Margit the Fell Omen, who is now granted that's just the first boss, that's just the first big boss. There's way worse in the game later on, but he's not exactly easy. He's a pretty challenging boss. So to me, the idea that 7 out of 10 people playing this game have beaten the first boss, they're sticking with it. Players
Yeah.
are sticking with Elden Ring, at least the first act, at least there.
And that is especially interesting when you compare the data from Dark Souls 3, which I love Dark Souls 3, but the drop off for boss
Oh
completion
yeah.
in Dark Souls 3 is aggressive. Only 60% of people beat the opening tutorial boss. The opening tutorial boss is 15 minutes into the game. That means 40% of people who tried Dark Souls 3 on Xbox didn't even play the game for like 30 minutes. So that is a huge, and
Mm.
then the drop off after the first boss, like the first actual boss, it drops down to like 35%. From there, it kind of levels out to a roughly 30-ish% of people, the dedicated
Sure.
30% that just saw it through. But
Yeah.
that is huge. Those are huge drop offs. And so to see, like you said, 70% of people on Steam beat Margit, that is impressive. And that shows that this game has legs and that people, even if they didn't love previous games, are sticking with it. I've had a ton of people DM me saying, I haven't felt this sense of wonder or exploration since Skyrim. And these are people who,
Yeah.
again, haven't loved Dark Souls per se in the past. It hasn't been their jam. They've had their concerns and their issues. So to hear them come out and say that they like it, I think that is the biggest testament to what From Software has achieved. Because going into this, I don't think there was any world where you and I, as big From Software fans, didn't enjoy the game. But
No. No.
even with all of that, I did not expect From Software to deliver what they delivered here. Um, I think they undersold it in a lot of ways, and it was one of those games that just constantly surprised me. It was so much more than the meme Big Dark Souls. It was just so much more than that, and I think that's why so many people are really connecting with it. So, given this critical and commercial success for Elden Ring and some data mines that kind of point to some possibilities for future quest lines and content, let's talk a little bit about the future of Elden Ring and DLC. Because From Software,
Mm.
with pretty much every Souls game, has done
Mhm.
DLC of some kind. So, if Elden Ring does get additional content in the future, what do you want to see? What are the features or modes or content you want to see added to Elden Ring?
Okay. So there's two things. I'm gonna go with one a little more generic, but I think it's fair, and then one very specific thing. Okay. So the first thing that's a little generic is I want a big expansion. Just as much like just one big DLC, Bloodborne Old Hunter style, where it's like here's a bunch of new bosses, a bunch of new weapons, this nice new area you can explore. I'm not going to say exactly what I think it should be because, frankly, I think Elden Ring already has a great amount of variety. It's not like there's something that's seriously lacking. I will say I think From Software could really play to our fears and unleash some terror if they did like something underwater themed, like navigating a flooded area or something like that. I think that could be cool. But hey, I'll leave it up to them. More specifically, I want a dueling arena. I want a
Yes.
specific setup for PvP arena. Miles, I'm sure you remember there was actually this spot in Dark Souls 3 where players, in one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen in gaming, set up an unofficial dueling arena where
Yep.
you would actually put your summon sign down, people would summon you in, and they'd have like a neutral party updating everything, making sure the fights were fair, a couple of spectators if there was room, and then you would have new people come in, like people set up championships online. It was amazing. It's one of the best things I've ever seen in gaming. So do that, but official. Have like an official roster, have official leaderboards, like go nuts with it from Soft. Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because one of the data mined things that people have discovered in this game is there are these kind of arenas scattered throughout the map that you can't enter. They're just like a big
Mhm.
dome. You see the exterior of it, but people have gone inside and seen that they are fully furnished. So the interior of these arenas are fully decorated, fully filled with objects. And so people are speculating that, yes, maybe this is going to be the format for more traditional PvP. And the interesting thing about Elden Ring is, unlike previous Souls games, you can only invade when someone is doing co-op, and it's limited to 4 players total now. So, even if you are an invader, chances are you're doing a 2v1 fight or a 3v1 fight every single time. And I would love From Software to drop the Thunderdome, where we can go in there, we can queue up for 1v1, or better yet, duos. Let's get some 2v2 arena battles going in Elden Ring. And I think that would be a great way to cater to the people who are going to get bored with the campaign, and then they're just going to start doing the broken builds and then just invade constantly and just grief people who are just trying to see the game through. Because that's what it's going to devolve to in the next couple months here. Once more and more people finish it and have figured out, like, oh, here's how I break the game, that's what it's going to be. And it's going to be obnoxious for the people trying to play co-op. So I'd love to see an arena. Another interesting note I want to talk about is I've been starting to dive into the lore. Now that I've seen the game, I've been going on YouTube, watching all the nerdy lore breakdowns of everything. One thing they point to is all of the divine towers scattered around the map. They form a shape that points to that cluster of clouds in the center of the map. So if you look on your map, you might notice there's this strange and out of place just cluster of clouds in the center. And so people are speculating that, if they do this big content drop for the game, that there will be a new area in the center of the map that is related to all of the divine towers. But
I like that theory. I like it. I hadn't noticed it, but I like it.
Yeah, I've been getting deep. I'm like 8 days and 8 hours in now, and now I'm starting to, piece together the lore, because From Software is always cryptic. You really got to work if you want to understand what the hell's going on. And even still, the beauty of it, it's open to interpretation. There aren't a lot of definitive answers for anything. So there's a lot of really fascinating theories. So Body hasn't dropped a video yet. He hasn't dropped an official lore video, which is a bummer. But there's been a lot.
That's the one I'm waiting on.
Yep.
That's the one I'm waiting on. Vadi, where are you, my man?
Come on. I know the game's huge. I know you want to make sure you do it right, but come on. People are waiting out here. We're hungry.
I need Vadi to say with a straight face, the loathsome dung eater. That was a challenge directly from Miyazaki, and I am here for it.
The loathsome dung eater. Oh, God. I see some people in the chat talking about, I'll play Elden Ring when it comes to Game Pass, or I want Elden Ring to come to Game Pass. Yeah, I was joking pre-release that, if Xbox did it, it would just be an absolute flex, and it would be just a total marketing thing. And I was saying that it would cost $500 million. $500 million to put it in Xbox Game Pass. People are like, no way, that's too much. No way. It's only going to sell X number of copies. And now that we're past 12 million, 500 million doesn't sound so wild. It doesn't sound that wild in the grand scheme of things. So it will be interesting to see if this comes to Game Pass at any point. I don't imagine it'll be in the first year, though.
I would not look for it to come to Game Pass until like maybe Summer Game Fest 2023. Maybe then. But like right now, as much as I would love it, why would you? If you're FromSoft, why would you take that deal right now? This game is selling like crazy. Come on.
The deal would have to just be dumb, because they are just selling copies, and the drop off isn't huge in terms of engagement. So I think it's going to continue to sell copies, and then as it starts getting brought up in the Game of the Year conversations, and if it ever goes on sale later on this fall, it'll just have this resurgence. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the trajectory of this game looks like. Quick shout out to all the amazing people joining us. If you are digging the show, if you're watching live, hit that like button, share it out. If you are listening on audio services, follow the show, drop a review, all of that great stuff. Harjeet Chani, channel member here. Excuse me. Harjeet Chani says, Starfield, Hogwarts Legacy, let's go. Yes, Starfield's coming, y'all. Starfield is coming. We got a little 5-minute spot, of a little 5-minute taster of what could potentially be there. Did you watch that? Did you watch the little dive?
I did watch that. Yes. I like it. Okay. I'll say this very quickly because I don't want to derail us too much. I understand some people have been like, where's the gameplay? Where's the gameplay? Where's the gameplay? Bethesda always does this, y'all. Bethesda always waits until the summer of the year that the game is going to come out. Then they do just a deep dive, like with Fallout 4, and they show several hours of diving into every little nitty gritty thing. They did it for Skyrim as well. That's what they're going to do for Starfield. Hang in there. With that in mind, I like what Bethesda's been doing. I like them just talking to the developers and saying, what are the themes of this game? What are we trying to accomplish? Like, a Bethesda Game Studios new IP is a really big freaking deal. And
Mm-hmm.
they are treating it with gravitas, I guess, for lack of a better word, and I personally like that. And I'm looking forward to the summer. But yeah, between Starfield and Hogwarts Legacy, we're all, and then obviously you're gonna have Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2. That's the big one as well this year. We're gonna have a packed holiday. We are gonna have a packed holiday.
As the kids say, we eating good, Sam. We eating good, baby.
There it is.
There
There
it
it
is.
is.
There it is. Yeah, real quick on Starfield. Todd Howard knows how to sell a game. He knows how to get people excited. Every time you see that dude come out in his little V-neck, showing off the little chest hairs, you know you're in for a ride, and you know he's going to sell you on the magic and the wonder and the experience. And Bethesda has, even if you don't love all of their games, they have done an amazing job proving they know how to make video game worlds that are compelling and engaging and encourage you to explore. And that's why they're so beloved. And that's why a new Bethesda IP is incredibly exciting. So, Starfield, I am excited about. The biggest test for Starfield is, will this make me love a sci fi RPG? Because historically, that has not been my genre. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying I have fundamental problems with them, but sci-fi RPGs in general have not been my jam. From No Man's Sky to Mass Effect, I haven't had one that's really come out and just suck me in. So if Starfield drops and manages to do that, for me, that will be the ultimate success. Because I'll be honest, I'm not super hyped for Starfield generally because Todd Howard telling me it's Skyrim in space. I'm like, dog, I'd be fine with Skyrim in Skyrim. Like, just give me Elder Scrolls 6. Like, Skyrim in space, that does nothing for me. But that being said, after playing stuff like The Outer Worlds, which I think is probably the game that's gotten closest to me in terms of delivering that engagement, I'm excited to see what they do. And again, I'm eager to check it out. I will be there day one. I will give it a fair shake. And I am hoping that Bethesda does the impossible and makes me love a sci-fi RPG. Couple super chats before we move on to our next topic, which is going to be about the initiative and people leaving. People purging from the initiative, Sam. Nick W says, on the PS4 version of Dark Souls 3, 60% beat the Crystal Sage. Oh, okay. 60% of people beat the Crystal Sage. That's good to see. That's nice. Pretty much like depending on the route you take, the second-ish boss. RG Charting.
Yeah.
Super chat. 12 million copies is about 500 million in revenue. Some people call me a prophet, Sam. Some people call me a prophet.
Some people do.
And there's
some people do.
Some figures. What is it? Paramount Plus coming to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. You're welcome. It's only 30 days, which a little bit of a cop-out, gotta say. They're just gonna give us a taste, just the first few episodes, and like
they want you hooked. They want you hooked. Watch the first 4 episodes. Get you in there. Get you in the door.
I know.
I get it.
I get it as well, but come on. I've been fighting Paramount Plus for so long. I haven't wanted to subscribe. I definitely am going to watch the Halo series. I'm hoping the Halo series is great, but I didn't want to pay for Paramount. I know. I went through my budget the other day, and I think I'm paying about $115 a month for all of my different video and gaming subscription services. And I'm like, yikes. I mean, it's only $5, but $5 is $5, Sam. It starts to add up here.
Yeah. No, it gets up there. It's $5 every month, like it tallies up. It tallies up.
Fingers crossed that it hits and it convinces me to sign up for Paramount Plus. All right, Sam, let's dive into the biggest conversations of this week. So the next 2 topics for this show are going to be about the initiative, Perfect Dark, and the current state of Xbox Game Studios. So as we're going through this, I would love to hear from the members of the community watching live. If you have concerns, if you have questions, if you have compliments even for how Xbox Game Studios' last few years have been, what the future looks like, that's what we're going to dive into. And with this being a live show, I really want to make this an open conversation with you, Sam, and with the community here, because I've seen a lot of passionate takes from people across all sides regarding this, and it is in a lot of ways a very complicated issue that is worth worth having those conversations, because there have been some developments with the initiative and Perfect Dark in particular that have been concerning to a lot of people. First up, we had it announced that Crystal Dynamics would be assisting with development of Perfect Dark. And for me, I thought that was weird. Like, I wasn't saying that it was bad or doom and gloom, but I did think it was a distinctly weird move that I legitimately never would have saw coming. And since then,
Mhm.
we've gotten this report from Andy Robinson of Video Games Chronicle, which talks about, oh, basically half of the core development team, big, huge roles within the initiative, have left in the last 12 months. And it's not uncommon for people to leave a project. That happens all the time. But I do think it is objectively uncommon that this many key figures of this brand new studio from Xbox have left in the same period of time. We've had the game directors leave. We've had lead level designers leave. We've had a lot of the core members of the initiative leave. And so, I guess before we dive into that section of the conversation, how did you feel when
Mhm.
you first heard that Crystal Dynamics would be assisting on development of Perfect Dark?
I was surprised that Square Enix let them, not that Xbox wanted them on it.
Yeah.
That was my thing. That was my thing. Is like, wait a minute. This is like Xbox. This makes sense. Daryl Gallagher is the former head of Crystal Dynamics. A lot of the initiative's early staff, some are not there anymore, but like some of them still are ex Dynamics. Like it's all the same gang. It's all the same pals. Like so to me, that made perfect sense that they'd want to partner with that studio to help flesh out the rest of the game. Especially because there was talks, I remember years back, even before Perfect Dark was revealed, of the initiative saying, we don't want to be the biggest studio out there. We want to be agile. We want to do a lot of top end work. But then you're gonna need someone to do like fleshing out the game, to building out stuff when the design is there. So yeah, Crystal Dynamics made perfect sense. I thought it was weird, however, that Square Enix didn't want them to do anything. Like, this is your premier Western developer, Square Enix. What you up to here? What's going on? Like, you don't need them to do it? Okay, all right. So no, I was not alarmed at that. I thought it made perfect sense from Xbox's side. But
Yeah,
that's the first half
you
of
bring up a
the
really
party.
interesting point about Crystal Dynamics being tied to Square Enix still. Like, that is one of their main teams. That is the team that has
Mhm.
shipped Tomb Raider, Avengers. A lot of their biggest Western games have come from Crystal Dynamics. So, like you said, it is very weird and strange that Square is just like, yeah, sure, go spend years doing this. Go spend
Mhm.
years with the core development team of Crystal Dynamics making a game for another publisher. Like, that whole situation is incredibly strange, and it's led a lot of people to speculate that this could be a trial period in terms of seeing whether or not Crystal Dynamics would be a good fit for Xbox Game Studios in terms of an acquisition. I could definitely see that if this project pans out well, if they prove that they can deliver, if they prove that they can vibe with the culture. I think that is a great fit, and it shows that Square Enix, for the right price, doesn't care about losing Crystal Dynamics. And that's kind of sad to hear, but we've seen Square Enix time and time again, you know, I don't want to say throw their teams under the bus because that is a bit dramatic, but they have not been shy when it comes to blaming studios and games for their own shortcomings, for underperforming. And I think that's probably a fundamental problem when you are working on a game like Marvel's Avengers. When you spend years on it, the publisher tells you to do this, you do this, it doesn't land in the way that people want, and then you are penalized for that pressure from the publisher. And the publisher says, "Yeah, this
Right.
underperformed. This isn't what we wanted." And you're like, damn, dog, like, I'm over here working hard to give you a game that you want, that you're happy with. That's how you're gonna do me?
These things are always complicated, but there is definitely an aspect of, wait, hold on, this operation was your idea. Who signed off on this in the first place? But yeah, that's tangential, but it is still interesting, of course, to watch.
Exactly. And it is, again, we only get bits and pieces of it. We don't get a lot of the full context for these stories. We don't often get an inside look into what's going on behind the scenes. So that's why I'm always careful not to make those sweeping statements, because we don't really know what the reality of the
Sure.
relationship between Square and Crystal Dynamics is. But Square Enix has had a problem with a lot of their titles not meeting expectations. And at a certain point, you have to start looking at Square and saying, well, are your expectations too unrealistic? because if every single Western release you put out is not hitting those expectations, it might be time to pump the brakes and shift those. But back
Yep.
into the situation with the initiative specifically, we
Right.
got to start having the harder questions here, more complicated
Right.
questions here. And so based on what we currently know, with a lot of these people leaving, with Crystal Dynamics being involved, should players be worried about the state of this studio and the state of Perfect Dark?
I think it's complicated because it sounds to me like they do have a plan, but at the same time, let's just be clear here. This is objectively bad news. Like, you don't want, assuming we don't know everything, but taking the VGC article at face value and then everything that's come out then. I think Jeff Grubb had some additional comments, but wasn't able to listen to his podcast on it, but I think he made some comments on it as well. It sounds like there was this heavy phase of experimentation where people were like senior designers, lead level designers were just trying to make all these different prototypes, all these crazy ideas, and some of them, a lot of them, weren't meshing well with what Daryl Gallagher and his studio director, I think I can never pronounce his name right, so I'm gonna butcher it. I'm very sorry. Numbaro, I believe.
It's
It's a very
Newberger,
difficult name to pronounce.
which I think I butchered as
Yeah,
well.
okay. We're very, very sorry if you ever hear this. But it sounds like they weren't meshing well. They weren't like getting along. They didn't agree on the direction of the game. And it sounds like Xbox, and this is the interesting thing to me, wasn't really intervening. They weren't saying, no, this side is right or this side is right. They were saying, well, figure it out. We're going to let you sort this issue out. And that's complicated, right? That's really complicated because oftentimes many publishers, Xbox in particular, have been criticized for meddling in the internal politics of a studio, not letting them figure their issues out, and forcing something to go some way, and then it turns out that that backfired horribly. And also compounding that, the Initiative is a completely new studio. They have not shipped a game yet. A lot of talent, not shipped a game yet. What is their culture? I don't think they have a culture yet. That's not me making excuses. I'm just saying this is a very complicated situation. There's a lot of different factors you need to examine here. I don't think it's good news that this many people left. However, I am not like super concerned about the game because it sounds like one, Daryl Gallagher won the argument and they have a clear direction from here on out of what they're doing, and the people who are staying have no problem with that and they know what they're going to do with the game. And then two, the fact that Xbox is willing to give them this time. The fact that they are not crunching them to be like, no, you got to get this game out by X year. You've got to do this. You've got to get, like, just let them figure it out. And it sucks. It really sucks seeing all these people leave. But you know what? If they've got issues with leadership and they're not happy, game talent is in very, 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 very high demand right now. They can find a job somewhere else, especially over there in California, where you've got all those different top tier studios across tons of different publishers. So yeah, I know that's a very long-winded way of explaining it, but I don't think this is a good thing. I'm not concerned for Perfect Dark or the Initiative yet, though.
Yeah, it is a complicated issue, and I'm glad you're here to have these conversations with me because again, I don't think it is anyone saying it's not a big deal at all. I don't think that is totally fair.
No,
But if you're
no.
saying that this studio and Xbox Game Studios is doomed, I also don't think that that is a fair place to be either, because it is clear that there was an initial vision and idea for what the Initiative would be and how they would approach games, and that's why we saw all these really high profile people jumping on early on, because you
Mhm.
had this promise of what the future could be and what this studio could be. And it sounds like the quote unquote initiative of the Initiative was to reevaluate how to develop games and reevaluate how to form a studio and how the quote unquote AAA landscape could work. And like you said, it focused on experimentation. And that was the big vision of the Initiative, was giving these people the opportunity to experiment with decent budgets, because indie games have always done a remarkable job experimenting, but it's smaller teams, smaller budgets. So financially, they have more flexibility. A lot of big publishers are scared of that experimentation because that kind of experimentation is expensive. And that kind of experimentation doesn't always deliver huge financial results. And so there was a period of time where the biggest publishers did not allow experimentation. I've seen people come out and say that Phil Spencer needs to be more involved. Phil Spencer needs to come from the top down and mandate certain things. But then at the same time, we are constantly complaining when that happens. When Dead Space 3 was forced to have the service component and the co-op, people were upset about that and the game didn't perform. And those are mandates coming down from the publishers in a lot of cases. And
Hmm.
so it's this interesting dichotomy where me personally, I love the fact that Xbox Game Studios seemingly is getting the flexibility financially and from a timeline perspective to experiment, go back to the drawing board and say, this idea wasn't working. We're not going to do this. This wasn't going to work for the game. So we're going to go back and revisit that. Everwild is another example people bring up, and we'll get more into that
Yep.
with the overall state of Xbox
Sure.
Game
Sure.
Studios. But, you know, people say that's in development hell, when realistically, when I hear people like Joe Neat say, we feel like the biggest funded independent studio of all time, that says to me that they are just getting whatever time they need and whatever resources they need to make sure that when Everwild hits, it's something fresh, something new, and it's fun. And I think as a
Yep.
player, that is incredibly exciting. Tunic is on the screen here. Tunic is a game that was revealed 2017, 5 years ago, something like that.
2018.
2018. Okay,
But
so yeah, close to 5 years ago, and I've been waiting. Every E3, I'm like, is this the one where we get the release date? Are we getting it?
no.
And no, and no, and no,
No.
and then I'm like, you get to a point where you're frustrated of waiting because we're all impatient, really, at the end of the day. But then Tunic drops, and it's amazing, and it's better than what I was expecting it to be, and it checks all the boxes, and it had the time it needed to succeed, and that's amazing. And so as long as at the end of the Perfect Dark initiative tunnel, we get a Perfect Dark game that is great and does something different and gives people an exciting title, I think the saga leading up to it won't really matter as much. Again,
There's this theory. Sorry, not to interrupt, but like
Oh yeah.
there's this theory, Miles, like when a group comes together for the first time, you've got different stages, right? Where it's like, what is it, storming, norming, and conforming. Sounds like they placed some heavy emphasis on the storming phase. It
Yep.
sounds like there was a lot of headbutting there. But I do think, as bad as that is, and as much as I wish the original vision could have panned out, maybe the studio will be better for it. And maybe now more senior talent will come in that realizes, oh, this is what we're doing from the ground up. This is the direction we're going to take. I have no issue with that. The initiative isn't really a defined team right now, but that's going to change in the future. And I think that'll help out. You know, like game development is messy at the best of times, and in many cases here we are far removed from the best of times.
Yes, again, I know some people are sick of hearing about the pandemic and all of that, and the reality is it's led a lot of people, even outside of video games, to ask themselves, what makes me happy? Like, what do I want to do? I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that with everything that's changed and how we're reevaluating what's important to us. I think that's happening across all aspects of life, and video game development can't be an exception to that. So, again, not only are things more complicated there, but you have a lot of people who've been in the industry for a while reevaluating what's making them happy. And again, for those who didn't catch this week's episode of Checkpoint with Jez Corden and I, we kind of provided some context for seemingly what the fundamental flaws were. And it seems like there were two trains of thought. You had one team who bought into the original vision, which was experimenting, doing kind of bigger budget, I guess, indie titles in some way. And they were going to, have this freedom to do that. And then you had the Daryl Gallagher team who looked at the initiative as basically this core group of people who would basically game plan ideas. They would have an idea, they would have an overall theme for a game. They would come up with a lot of the core themes, the narrative, the overall design principles, and then they would partner with studios like Crystal Dynamics to execute on their vision. And so that's how they plan to remain nimble, I think, moving forward, is having that core team that has the ideas, that comes up with the design, and then partnering with teams to execute on that design. And it sounds like you said, that is the design principle that won out. But obviously, a lot of people who joined early on were not happy with that design principle, and they wanted to build a more organic studio, build their own culture, and have everyone involved with the process for the entirety of it. It's tough to say which of these is better. Based on what we've heard regarding that, do you think there is an approach Is one of these approaches more exciting to you personally?
Okay. We don't have a lot of examples either way, bluntly, but what I will say is what immediately comes to mind to me is you have World's Edge at Xbox, which is not a huge studio. It's like 60, 70 people, maybe. So I'm pulling that number out of thin air, but like I swear I've heard that a couple times. It's not a big studio. It's not a big team. They're completely remote, unlike the Initiative. And what they do is they have the outline of the game, and then they partner with other studios like Forgotten Empire, Relic Entertainment, etc., to execute and flesh out new Age of Empires games. To me, the Daryl Gallagher approach was always what I thought the Initiative was going to be. That's why it wasn't shocking to me when I heard the news of Crystal Dynamics. I thought, oh yeah, of course, duh, makes perfect sense. High-end team gets the design, doc, etc. You partner with a big team to execute. However, here's the thing: if a developer doesn't agree with that, you can go somewhere else, and that's
Uh-huh.
totally fine. There's a lot. Game development is messy, but like at the same time, I will caution people. I can think of another big studio that had a long history of just trying different prototypes and a lot of talent that tried little small things and experimented. They're called Japan Studio, and they're no longer with us. So just it's one example. It's just one example, but I'm just putting that out there. You know?
Just putting it out there. Yeah, it is
Hmm.
interesting. And again, I think these conversations are important to have, and I'm not criticizing anyone who's looking at this situation as a negative because there are some negative elements of it. And it is refreshing to have Daryl Gallagher come out and basically, despite this obviously negative report, this report was not going to be in a
Hmm.
positive light. They still shared a comment about basically the future of the Initiative. And it sounds like Daryl Gallagher and everyone who is staying with the Initiative is excited about this vision, is excited about the future of Perfect Dark, and they have a clear vision and roadmap for what it's going to be. So I think at the end of the
Hmm.
day, I'm not too concerned about the overall quality of the title itself. And obviously, this was a big learning experience for the Initiative and Xbox Game Studios when it comes to what really goes into building a team from the ground up,
Hmm.
because it is rare that a team of that profile and that caliber just comes out of nowhere and puts out their first title. That is incredibly rare. So I'm gonna give a quick shout out to the 170 people rocking with us on this fine Saturday. If you are watching live, hit that like button, share it out. If you are listening on audio services, follow the show, review the show, all that great stuff. I'm going to get to some super chats here before we move on to the current state of Xbox Game Studios. So, again, if you are just joining us with the live nature of the show, I want this to be very interactive. So, if you have questions, if you have compliments, if you have concerns about how Xbox Game Studios is currently operating, share them in the chat. Let's make this an open conversation and let's get everyone involved here. So, Nick W has an interesting super chat, and I want to bounce off this for a little chat. I think some Xbox games are announced too early. Sam, do you think Xbox has a problem showing games too early, too often?
So I'm going to give a cop out answer, unfortunately,
Don't you
Miles. I'm
dare.
going to say
Don't.
yes, but it's not entirely their fault.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
but it's not entirely their fault. What I mean by that is pre-Bethesda. Let's wind the clock back a couple of years. Back in an Xbox Game Studios only world where Bethesda Softworks wasn't the second publisher and they weren't in the process of getting Activision Blizzard as the third first party publisher. So like just XGS. They had a lot of cool talent coming in. Obsidian, Ninja Theory, Double Fine Productions, all this cool stuff. But unfortunately, some of those games were a ways off. They weren't quite ready yet. However, they didn't really have anything announced. They didn't have any big games announced. You had like Halo Infinite at the time, and then that was kind of it. I guess Psychonauts 2 because Double Fine was finishing that up, so you can count that. But there weren't a lot of games. They had to show games. Fortunately, then a little thing called the global pandemic happened, and that wiped out AAA game development at the top level. There's multiple reports of publishers losing months of work, taking several months to just reorganize and get working remote again. And when they started working remote, it wasn't as easy. They lost time. That's not a cop out, I'm just trying to say that they were in an ugly position where would you prefer they not announce any games at all? Like, yeah, I think Fable, in an ideal world, Fable would have been announced a couple of years closer to its release. Same with Avowed, same with like Hellblade 2. But also, I promise you, they didn't think those games were going to take as long as they would to make because of the pandemic. I firmly believe, Miles, that when they showed Hellblade 2 off at the Game Awards 2019, they thought Hellblade 2 was coming in the first half of 2022. I believe that. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe they thought Avowed would be like a fall 2022 game. I'm not trying to excuse it entirely, but a lot of people continue to act like the world didn't lose a year completely, and it's starting to get under my skin, if I can be honest about that. It's starting to annoy me. I feel like it's taken out of context and people ignore it when they want to ignore it, and it's irritating me. But at the same time, yes, I think some games have been announced a little too early, even with that in mind.
Yes, and again, I know some people are sick of hearing about the pandemic, blah blah blah, but like you said, we can't pretend like it wasn't a reality for a lot of these teams and a reality for everyone's lives. A lot of people just lost a year of their life in game development, like you said. A lot of people were not used to working remotely. Some studios had no structure set up at all, really, for working remotely. So they had to completely create that, and that takes time,
Mhm.
and that was not as efficient in a lot of cases. So, yes, Xbox, when they showed a lot of these games, I don't think they anticipated to add a year and a half ish, in some cases
Mhm.
more, to the development cycle of every single game that they showed off. And again, I think that is where a lot of the frustration from the community are coming from. So I
Mhm.
really think that they were in a lose-lose situation because they were in the process of acquiring new teams. They were in the process of changing leadership, getting Phil Spencer more involved, getting Xbox more involved as a key pillar of Microsoft's business. And they wanted to show what the future was going to look like. And even though it was CG, and even though a lot of this was going to be a ways out, they wanted you to get excited about the future of Xbox. And I don't think that's nefarious. I don't think that was a bad thing to do. But I think now that we are years out from some of those reveals, just people are just getting antsy. Like I was getting antsy with Tunic.
Sure.
People just want to play these games, and I don't think that's bad. But I think that is where a lot of this negativity and where all of these concerns of quote unquote development hell in big air quotes,
Mhm.
are coming from regarding Xbox Game Studios titles. Because like you said, um, pandemic affected a lot of people, and a lot of these games had their timelines pushed massively, and that
Yeah.
sucks for Xbox. But once you've opened that can of worms, you can't really put them back in there. So the game's already revealed, and now you just got to kind of dictate the messaging and figure out when you can actually show something that's going to keep people excited and engaged with the future of
Yeah.
Xbox. All right. Space Dovahkiin says, I think Xbox has earned the benefit of the doubt so far. They're making huge improvements on variety and quality. They had a big 2021. Yeah, it's what is especially interesting to me about the seeming negativity, and I know this isn't everyone and this isn't the majority, but Xbox just came off the back of one of its best years and holidays ever. They were the overall highest reviewed publisher of 2021. They had Halo
Mhm.
Infinite and Forza Horizon 5, which were both nominated and won various Game of the Year awards from a lot of big outlets. Um, so just months after
Psychonauts 2 as
Psychonauts
well.
2,
Like I know it was multi-plat, but Psychonauts 2, it counts.
Psychonauts 2. So yeah, it's funny that right off the back of all of that, people are like, Xbox is doomed. I'm worried about Xbox Game Studios when they've, like Space Dovahkiin said, done a really good job proving that they are making huge improvements to the quality of games. We compare 2021 to how State of Decay 2 launched, to how Crackdown 3 launched, how even Sea of Thieves launched. They've made huge
Yep.
strides
Yep.
to ensure that when these games ship, they are of a great quality. And again, we're going to get more into the current state of Xbox Game Studios, Halo Infinite specifically, but I think they did an amazing job in 2020.
Sure.
Okay. Yodani says, Wary O cute characters in Games Moon Studios, anyone? What? Can you clarify? Wary O cute
Yeah,
characters
yeah.
in Games Moon Studios. anyone. Yodani, I'm sorry. I don't know what you're asking or saying with that
Same.
one. All right, Sam, let's get into it. Let's dive straight into the current state of Xbox Game Studios, because the issue with the initiative and the reports of people leaving have made people go
Sure.
back and look at the current state of Everwild, the current state of Halo, and say, does Xbox have a problem managing its teams? Like, should we be worried about future releases? So, where are you at right now with the current state of Xbox Game Studios? Are you happy? Are you upset? Where are you at?
This is going to be a boring answer, but I think they have work to do, but I think they've come a long way and they're doing a good job overall. Because to me, Miles, here's the thing. Yeah, it sucks that Everwild and Perfect Dark are now what? Probably 2024 games? Like, realistically, like, we're not going to see them in 2023. Like, see you in 2024. Okay. Sure, that sucks. But I appreciate the fact that the Microsoft of old would have just shuttered them. That's just the honest truth. They would have closed those teams down. There would have been layoffs. Like, look at what happened with Lionhead. Something that Phil Spencer has said he deeply regrets. He said he thought that was a failure, and like if they could do it over again, maybe they would have handled that situation a different way. He spoke with a lot of regret about that in the Power On documentary. Great documentary that I recommend everyone go watch if you haven't. So there are problems here. Halo Infinite has issues in terms of its roadmap. I'm not as negative on it, bluntly, as a lot of people are. I've been happier than a lot of people are, but there are definitely things to criticize in terms of, okay, I respect the fact that you will not crunch the team. I'm respecting the fact that you're taking the time to make sure the team is healthy, but maybe get some other teams in there then, because we would like a few more maps a little more frequently, a few more modes a little more frequently. Like, there's definitely stuff to criticize there. But also, I think this is ignorance they've had. Look at Forza Horizon 5 and how that game has been handled, and how updates for that game have been handled. And I think Playground Games has done an amazing job. The fact that they did just delay out Psychonauts 2 seemingly unendingly, just Double Fine had the time to like go back in and add the boss fights, to add that extra layer of polish, that extra layer of accessibility features. I know it's under Bethesda technically, and it was a timed exclusive for PS5 because of the deal being signed, but allowing Deathloop to be delayed and just like, no, you know what? Even though this means it'll take longer for the game to get to Xbox console users and PC Game Pass users, take the time, make sure the team doesn't crunch. Dinga Bacabo recently did an interview over with Games and he talked about how Deathloop did not have any crunch, as opposed to some of the studio's prior games like Dishonored 2. And that is important. And I think, not quite unfair, but I think it's unreasonable for people to point to the failures only and not point to the successes. Does that make any sense? Do you see the wavelength I'm on, Miles? That's kind of where I'm at. Especially because, not to cherry pick because everyone has problems, but the reality is if you look across the industry, there have been a lot of other problems at publishers who seemingly can do no wrong. Frankly, over the last few years. Sony Santa Monica had a massive, expensive science fiction game canceled and the entire production wing of the studio laid off before God of War was a massive hit. The studio was on very shaky legs before God of War 2018 turned out to be a huge deal. And like, maybe that could have been handled a little differently. Maybe it couldn't. I don't know. Bend Studio. How many reports have we gotten out of what happened at Bend and the disasters that being on, and now finally, oh yeah, they're making a new IP, and also a ton of the senior leadership left, and we have to make a new IP. Like, and that's not me criticizing them. I get it. I totally get it. But that is happened under PlayStation, and to a lot of people, PlayStation can seemingly do no wrong. And this isn't a console war thing. Let's go over and take a look at Nintendo. I'm going to say 3 words. Metroid Prime 4. What happened with that game? Announced back in 2017.
Logo? Come on, man.
We got a logo, and then, oh yeah, game development is starting over, and that's good. That's good. I'm not doing this to highlight anyone's problems and say, well, what about them? I'm saying issues happen, and you got to handle it. That's the way it is. That's just how these things go. And it sucks. It can seem unfair, but that's life. I said it before, I'll say it again. Game development is hard at the best of times, and we are not in the best of times. Yeah. Xbox Game Studios has a lot of work to do in a lot of different ways. But to say they haven't come far, like, no, they have come a very long way, and I am optimistic about the direction moving forward. And I'm optimistic about the direction of the industry moving forward. This is a little kumbaya, but I personally think Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo are all in the best places they've ever been in their history. So,
I
you
don't
know.
think that's an exaggeration to say at all. I totally agree. Um, it is absolutely fair to say that Xbox has a ways to go, but like you said, it is 100% fair to say that Xbox Game Studios and Xbox as a games publisher has come such a long way. And what excites me about Xbox Game Studios right now are the things you mentioned where they are giving these teams the times and resources, and they are looking at crunch work culture, and they're looking at some of the kind of traditionally terrible things that some people just said, well, that's how games are made, that's what we're going to have to do, and they're looking at that and saying, well, is that the way that games need to be made? They've been made that way in the past, and sure, that benefits the publisher in some ways because they have timelines, they have investors, they're trying to hit milestones, blah blah blah. But when you eliminate all of that and you look at the people making the games and you look at the quality of the games, I think what Xbox understands is that even if it takes longer, even if it's more work, if you build that relationship with these people and you build that relationship with your community, that you want to ensure the games you put out are great and not come at the expense of someone's life and, you know, interest in video games, because you hear stories all the time of someone who's had such a miserable experience developing video games
Mhm.
that they are done, that they leave the video games industry because of how draining and how exhausting that is. And as someone who did
Yeah.
audio in the film industry, I had a similar trajectory. I was really excited about doing that. I wanted to do that. I went in, worked on some projects, was just treated like complete trash, didn't even get paid in some cases. And there were all of these issues
Jeez.
and hurdles that made me say, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I was so excited to do this. I wanted to be in this industry. I wanted to be a part of this. But if this is what it is, no, it's not worth it. It's not. And like that stuff to me, that breaks my heart to hear. And you do hear about it with some of the biggest publishers, some of the biggest titans, and Microsoft, you know, as much as some people say, well, they're judged unfairly, blah, blah, blah. I personally am going to hold Microsoft to a higher standard because they are holding themselves to a higher standard. And if they are
Mhm.
telling me that they are trying to reevaluate video game work culture and they are trying to make sure that there's no crunch, there's no toxic work environments, they're trying to have a more diverse work environment, I'm holding them to that. 100%. They're not going to get any leniency from me in that regard, because
Mhm.
you don't get to just casually say that and not have it be the reality. And if that reality means that it takes longer to make a game, then whatever. Like Microsoft, again, I'm very very cynical of companies with huge piles of money to throw around. And
Mhm.
Microsoft to me has that huge pile of money to throw around, and if they're going to use it for good to make sure that they can use that pile of money to make good games and treat people well, then I will celebrate that. I will champion that 100% of the time. But if they don't, if they use that huge pile of money for nefarious reasons, I will be incredibly aggressively vocal, because Xbox to me wants to be the future of video games in so many ways. And I want them to succeed because they have a great vision on paper for what that could look like for everyone involved. And so, yeah, again, I get that for me personally, and I've seen this thrown around a lot, that they are held at on a different standard, but I don't think it's unfair to put them on a different standard because that is the expectation that they've set. All right, let's see here. Huge shout out to the almost 200 people rocking with us on this beautiful Saturday. If you are digging the show, smash that like button, share it out. We got some more kind of conversations about the current state of Xbox Game Studios. Let me make sure I'm all caught up on these super chats here. Okay, so we got a clarification on Yodani's super chat regarding Moon Studios. So
Okay.
let's dive into that. That wasn't on the docket, but there was a report that came out about the work culture of Moon Studios and the relationship between Moon Studios and Xbox. So, if you're unaware, Moon Studios is the developer of Ori, the Blind Forest, and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, love it. It's one of my all-time favorite platformers. It has come
Mhm.
out that their workplace was oppressive, and that some of that basically the two co-founders of the studio were kind of gross to their employees in a lot of ways. They were trolly, they were mean-spirited, and a lot of people vocally complained about working for it. And folks like
Mhm.
Jez Corden have come out and said that those are the reasons that Xbox was not working with them on their next game, because Xbox found out about this oppressive, toxic workplace culture and said, "No, we don't want to support that. We're not going to give you any money to endorse that." And that's why allegedly that their next project is not being published by Xbox. So Sam, when you started reading
Yep.
about these reports, GamesBeat Dean over there broke the story. How did you feel?
Yeah.
How did that hit you? As I know you're a fan of Ori. How did that hit you?
Yeah. Miles, it's always heartbreaking when you read these kinds of stories. It's easy to become numb to it, I think, if you read them a lot and you're reporting on them a lot. The Activision Blizzard stuff in 2021, good lord, just the constant nature of that and how much that came down. But I'd be lying if I said this one didn't sting a little more. Because I love Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisp. It's not one of my favorite platformers. It is my favorite platformer. It is one of my favorite games of all time. It is very firmly in like my top 10 games of all time. I was heartbroken to read this. The fact that two people running a completely remote, mind you, a completely remote work from home, work at your pace studio that has been held up as an example of how to do remote work properly, even through the pandemic. The fact that this team was being essentially led by two people who made 4chan troll comments. The
Yeah.
commentary that I expect from like 0 follower made 2 weeks ago Twitter accounts. Are you kidding me? That's unacceptable. It is completely 100% unacceptable. I'm not going to dictate what needs to happen there because I feel for the people who are under that leadership and who have suffered that but still worked on those games and made those games. They can't take Will of the Wisp or Blind Forest away from me or from other people. Those games, like, they're not untouchable, but they still mean that and they're always going to mean that. But one, yeah, no wonder the relationship between Moon and Xbox seemingly just fell apart like that. And number two, I'm going to have an electron microscope on whatever Moon is doing next. And how it actually turns out, are they actually improving? Have they actually meaningfully apologized for what they said? Not just some mumbled sorry. That's not going to cut it. Like, are you actually trying to treat people with dignity and respect? Building them up, not tearing down their work because you want to just bully them to get them under your wing? No. Like, unacceptable. Completely unacceptable.
Yeah, it was really disheartening to read that. As someone who loves Ori, loves the beautiful world and these beautiful
Mm-hmm.
characters and this touching story of, empathy and triumph through hardship, to know that it was made by people who, like you said, had these really disgusting, terrible trolley comments to their employees, like, of all things, like, to
Mm-hmm.
share those types of messages in their work thread, that really really bummed me out. And if it is true that that is the reason Xbox doesn't work with them, I have to applaud that, because
Yep.
they have Xbox positioned Ori as a mascot for Xbox.
Yep.
There was an official Xbox t-shirt at Target where one of the 5 faces that they had on their shirt was Ori. So Xbox clearly held value in that IP, held value in that team, and for them to basically say that, you're like, no, we are not going to work with you on this next game, despite the fact that you were involved with one of what we consider to be one of our mascots. That means a lot, and that says a lot about the future and the culture of
Yeah.
Xbox. And yeah, I love Ori. I really really love Ori, and hearing that is a huge bummer. And like you said, it doesn't take away the experience for me. Like, you can't revoke
No.
that experience,
No.
but it does make me far less excited about what the future projects from
Right.
that team look like, which is a bummer.
Yep.
Um, Burke Andy with a little super chat here says, "Hey, gotta run. Love the community. Love the Domp. Peace, love, and success." But Sammy
I'm
T,
stealing that now. The Domp. The Domp. I love it.
Sammy T, and the Domp in the house. Let's go. Xbox Chaturdays live. All right,
That's going to be the name of our indie rock album. No question.
Yep, Sammy T and the Domp. Okay, let me make sure that we've covered all of our bases here on the current state of Xbox game studios. All right, let's talk about the future. We know that Xbox has some work to do. What do you want to see
Mhm.
Xbox do in the next year and a half? What is
Year
a
and a half.
successful year and a half look like to you, knowing the fact that some of their biggest games might be a ways out? How do they succeed with their
Sure.
platform, with Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Game Studios?
Okay. I'll try to lay it down. I'll try to be realistic. We're not going to shoot for the moon here. Yeah, I want to keep it real. Um, this year is all about Bethesda. That's just the
Hmm.
reality of the situation. And honestly, I almost said this earlier, but thank God they got Bethesda Softworks as a publisher because wow, this year would look interesting if they didn't have them. Lordy Lord, it was
Xbox has no
almost a
games.
little spooky.
Just, oh, you ain't
Little
wrong.
spooky. That's what the kids say.
Little spooky.
Yeah, so this year's all about Bethesda. Show off Redfield, good lord. Show off Redfall and especially Starfield. Give them the time they need, all the presentation time, multiple showcases if need be. Like, show those games off. If there are other games, like we think there will be, like As Dusk Falls and Forza Motorsport, the service reboot-esque relaunch, like, okay, show those off, give them the time they need. I don't think that's too much to ask. I think marketing those games well, showing them off in depth, showing gameplay, perfectly fine. Moving into 2023, I want to see a showcase, just one, singular, Miles, singular, not plural. One showcase that doesn't take place in the summer. I do, with how many studios Microsoft has. They're at 23 right now. On paper, that doesn't account for like Arcane and Playground both actually being two. It doesn't account for stuff like that. They are at 23 studios, and they're going to be at 30 with Activision Blizzard when that goes through sometime, probably like early next year. We think it's around there. You need another showcase. You need
Hmm.
another one in there. March or April, something like that. You need another period of time, and you can have one, in my opinion, this is me talking who doesn't work at Xbox, that shows off the games coming later that year in depth, and then maybe the one in the summer can be, all right, yeah, we got that stuff coming later this year. Here's what the future of next year on Xbox looks like. I think that is a good compromise. I think if you fit one more showcase in there, you can spread things out and have enough room to talk about this stuff. Because it's getting kind of packed.
it's it's getting ridiculously packed, and I don't want to be in a situation where every year we have the Xbox Bethesda Activision game showcase and it's 5 straight hours, because that's what it's going to have to be. Like, as much as I joked about volunteering to host it, I'm not going to host a 5 hour showcase. I'm not even going to watch a 5 hour showcase if that's how they're going to handle it. So I agree. I talked about a quarterly Nintendo Direct style conference, but even if you give us one in spring, one in summer, and then did the fan event towards the end of the year that they used to do. Even if you did those three and made sure that the spring one showed you what was coming this holiday, or I guess spring and summer could really show you what's coming this holiday or into next
Sure,
year.
sure.
And then have the fan one be like a big, like, this game isn't coming soon, but here's why you should be excited as an Xbox fan. Use that for some of the CG reveals, some of the hype stuff. I think that would be
The
such.
Game Awards as well. I know that's
Yes.
not theirs, but like the Game Awards, they show stuff there. They can keep doing that. No problem.
Exactly. They've been leaning into the Game Awards to great success. Clearly, they're happy with Jeff's show. Clearly, they're happy with the publicity that they get from that. And I think it's a good way to do it, because what I want as someone who is an Xbox fan is I want Xbox to be exciting for everyone. I want Xbox to be
Mm.
exciting for more than just the Xbox fans. And I think they've done a really good job catering to Xbox fans, but I want them to reevaluate how they cater to everyone who loves gaming and make it so an Xbox show has the same hype, has the same energy as a Nintendo Direct. And State of Play, to some extent, State of Play, again, has its issues,
D-
but
Depending on the one, some of them are better than others. Some are better than others, for
yeah,
sure.
they like set the precedent that, oh, this is like a Nintendo Direct, and then since then it's been very inconsistent as to what the format, what the focus is going to be. I didn't have a problem with the latest one regarding Hogwarts Legacy, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was interesting to see a State of Play specifically dedicated to one third-party multi-platform release. Again, cool, but
Hmm.
it just seemed like a marketing thing to be like, associate this holiday game with PlayStation. And maybe they're doing that strategically because they know their holiday isn't going to be that packed, and they want to have some sort of brand association moving into it. And again,
It's a big game. It's going to sell a lot of copies, get that mind share going. Yeah.
again, it's some of that stuff is just more boring marketing stuff, but it works. People constantly forget how impactful the marketing was with Destiny on PlayStation. A lot of
Mhm.
people thought that Destiny was a PlayStation exclusive just because they saw a lot of commercials on TV that had the PlayStation logo following the Destiny trailer. That's all they did. They partnered with Bungie. They released some trailers. They didn't even say exclusively. They just, bam, slapped the PlayStation logo at the end. And I had people hitting me up saying, dude, are you getting Destiny? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get it on Xbox. And they would say, oh, I thought that was a PlayStation exclusive. So as much as that stuff is kind of boring for us who are in the know, absorb as much gaming news as we
Mhm.
possibly can every week, it does work. And I think that's why we saw the Hogwarts Legacy State of Play. And if you look at it, God, it's got millions and millions of views. So clearly,
Yeah, yeah.
people were excited about that. Um, I agree. It's if we're looking at the next 18 months, it'll be interesting. Like you said, if Bethesda was not in the equation, that would be interesting. We'd have Grounded 1.0, maybe. That's up in the air as to when that might officially come out. As Dusk Falls, we will have as well. Tunic, technically a timed Xbox exclusive, but still little
Sure, sure.
Xbox
We were
exclusive.
talking first party only, but yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're looking only at first party, it would be very barren, just completely barren. And even with Bethesda, we don't know the status of Redfall. There are talks that
Mm.
maybe that's getting pushed. That has not been confirmed by any means. I don't want to make
Yeah.
that seem like that's the reality of that, but that game's supposed to come out this summer. And even if we're going in line with how Bethesda works, we should have seen gameplay by now, if that's the case. If it is coming out this summer as a
Mhm.
Bethesda title, we should have seen gameplay of some kind by now, and we haven't. So if we put a question mark on Redfall, we have Starfield at the end of November. We have Starfield
Mhm.
at the end of November, and
Oh, November 11th is closer to the start of the month than the end, if you want to
oh, I
get
guess sorry, yes,
technical
sorry,
about things.
yes, November 11th. My bad. Yes, November
Your
11th.
point remains.
I was
Your point
thinking
very much remains.
11/22, but 11/11/22.
Right.
And then maybe Forza as well. Maybe Forza
Mhm.
again, another question mark. So I get the people who are online vocal about Xbox's current trajectory, what this year looks like. Because cool, we know Fable's coming, we know Hellblade's coming, we know Everwild's coming, we know State of Decay 3 is coming. We know if you look at the list of games that are coming, it is absolutely massive. It is ridiculous. It is far more
Mhm.
ridiculous than what we know of Nintendo, what we know of PlayStation, by a lot, by just an objective margin. There is way more that we know confirmed to be coming from Xbox. But still, despite that, there are a lot of people saying Xbox doesn't have anything coming. I haven't seen gameplay. Why am I excited about this? And I think some of that's fair. I think some of it is, designed just to downplay Xbox, but I think some of it is fair. Um, so with that being said, you talk about a showcase. What is the ideal Xbox showcase look like for you? If Xbox starts doing showcases that aren't only the one dump, do you want to see hyper focus like we saw with Hogwarts Legacy, or do you want to see a sprinkling of a bunch of different titles in a showcase?
Um, you know what? Again, I hate to be that guy, but I'll split you down the middle. We're
Don't
gonna split it
Sam
down the middle here.
commit.
Yep. I think like this year, a very hyper focused showcase. Show third party games coming to Game Pass, just a handful of third party games coming to Game Pass, like they did last year. I think last year's showcase was great. I think they did a really good job, but just show the third parties coming to Game Pass, show off Redfall, show off Starfield, show off Forza Motorsport, maybe a quick release date for As Dusk Falls.
Yeah.
Like there you go, hyper focused. Let's just say March or April, so spring next year. You again hyper focused. Keep it focused on first party, but like, if you have third party that are coming to Game Pass at the time, you can throw them in as well. Keep it focused to about maybe 10 or so games, 8, 9, 10 games, and just what are the first party games? Like, let's say Hellblade 2 is coming out next year, all right? Show off another look at gameplay or a new trailer. When's the release date? Avowed, gameplay reveal, release window, something like that. I think you shouldn't highlight just one specific game. I think that is, as much as I understand why Sony does it, I don't think that works for Microsoft's model. But also, I don't want them to go too wide at the same time. I don't want them blasting like, "Hey, here's 70 games, the biggest showcase ever." It's like, uh, can we focus a little? Can we narrow the scope a little
I'd be
here?
fine with like 10.
I
If you give me a few
Yeah,
minutes of 10, I'd be
if,
good.
if all of them are either first party games or games coming to Game Pass, like from third parties, yeah, I think 10 to 12 is fine. Especially again, if you're doing multiple showcases throughout the year. If for some reason they don't choose to do that, we'll have to recalculate some things there. But in a multiple showcase world, I think that works.
Yeah, because you bring up an interesting point regarding the hyper focused showcases. If you are someone who's not interested in that game, or you tell yourself you're not interested in that game, you're not going to watch that showcase at all. If you know this is
Hmm.
a Hogwarts Legacy showcase, and you say I don't care about Harry Potter, then you are skipping that. And
Hmm.
what I think is, I don't want to. I'll just say what I think is kind of baffling about the way Xbox approaches it is we have updates for State of Decay 2. We have updates for Sea of Thieves. We have updates for Forza. We have updates for
Hmm.
Halo, and they're all completely isolated and basically curated to one diehard fan group who chances are is already in tune with what's happening. Sure, they want it, but I would
Hmm.
love to see those kind of things sprinkled into a general show so people who maybe aren't hyper in tune with what's going on in Sea of Thieves can see that and say, "Oh, wow, Sea of Thieves is adding this. This looks really cool." Or I wasn't expecting this. I'll check this out. And I think doing that will kind of pull more people into a broader scope or a broader range of your games. And I'm a little torn because it is important to cater to your fan base and make sure that your most dedicated audience is getting the information that they want. People right now mad about Halo Infinite, Sam. Mad about
Hmm.
how quiet 343 has been. And that's coming off of the lead up to Halo Infinite, where they were very vocal, they were very transparent, they were
Hmm.
very open, and they were communing with the
Yep.
audience constantly. And now it's kind of been this quiet phase, and because of that silence, a lot of people are taking that silence and filling it in with pessimism.
Sure.
And so that's why I'm a little torn. I like the focus showcases for the fandoms, but I think Xbox could do a better job pulling all of their universes and franchises together into a showcase. And then that way, the people who don't really understand what's happening at all of the teams within Xbox can look at it and say, yeah, Xbox does have a lot going on. Xbox does have a
Hmm.
lot of games coming. There's a lot of stuff to be excited about. And I think that would go such a long way in satiating the people who are, still saying that Xbox, quote unquote, has no games. Because Xbox,
I think we can put that particular phrase to rest, Miles. There is plenty of room for improvement, plenty of room for criticism. But if you're at this point, if there isn't something that they have that's interesting to you, I think you just hate gaming. I'm just gonna say that. But
I'm glad you said it because I would have said it. Yeah, at this point, again, I think anyone who loves gaming and looks at what Xbox has delivered, it plans on delivering, and says, none of this interests me, I have to wonder where on earth that's coming from. Because even if you love PlayStation, even if you love Nintendo, Xbox has done such a good job giving you a diverse portfolio of games. They literally are trying to give something for everyone, no matter what you want, and that is huge. Nobody has really been able to do it perfectly, but Xbox has made enormous strides to do that. So I can't stand when I hear people say that I don't really care about Xbox. Xbox doesn't have any games that I want to play, and I'm just like, what do you play? What on earth? What games do you actually play? Maybe that's unfair, but
maybe,
I don't know.
maybe not.
And I guess we can have a broader conversation about the importance of first party as well, because a lot of Xbox fans and a lot of PlayStation fans, obviously, they put the most stake into the first party games
Hmm.
because they invest in that platform. They want to be excited about that platform. The platform
Yeah.
holders understand that it is important to give your fans compelling exclusives to get people to buy into your platform. But do you think we put too much stake into first party games?
No, I don't think so. Honestly, I think we're putting just enough because the reality is that is what a platform is defined by. At the end of the day, there are services, sure, like the third party games offered on services like Game Pass or PlayStation's rumored Spartacus, and we still need to see how
Hmm.
that actually shapes out when it actually gets announced, seemingly in the near future. Third party games obviously are going to sell across multiple platforms, but especially and I do not think there's concerns or fear or anything like that, but especially now that a couple of the big third parties have been taken out, more and more companies keep being bought out. No, in fact, I'd argue, Miles, that first party is more important now than it ever has been for a game, for a gaming company, rather.
We are at this kind of interesting transition away from the console wars, quote unquote, into the war of exclusive content. We've seen that
Mm,
aggressively being flexed when it comes to video streaming services. And there are a lot of,
mm-hmm.
as we just talked about with the Halo TV series, exclusive to Paramount Plus. There's a lot of people who are saying that
Yeah.
I need noteworthy exclusive content on my platform so people sign up for my subscription service. And I think that is the more important
Mm-hmm.
part of, if you're someone who just buys games a la carte, I don't think the perceived value of an exclusive has changed. But if you're someone who buys into subscription services, and if you are a
Mm-hmm.
platform holder trying to get people to sign up for your subscription service, you definitely need more exclusive content, and that's why Xbox is throwing around billions and billions and billions of dollars to make sure they have this massive stable of studios who can give you content consistently. And that's why they are calling up their third party publisher partners and saying, "Yo, how you feeling about Rainbow Six Extraction? Yo, how you feeling about Outriders? You want to make a deal? You want to get this in Game Pass? Let's get some engagement. Let's get more people playing your multiplayer game, and let's let people know that Xbox Game Pass, in addition to great first party stuff, will get some cool third party stuff as well." So I'm a little torn because yes, exclusives are important, but then we see games like Elden Ring, and Elden Ring dominates the conversation, is bigger and more talked about than
Sure.
any PlayStation exclusive, any Xbox exclusive, any Nintendo exclusive. And then you have people like fixating on, is From Software making an exclusive for PlayStation? Is From Software making an exclusive for Xbox? And you look at the sales figures for Bloodborne, and you see Bloodborne sold 2 million copies. And I have to imagine if you're From Software and you've seen this enormous success with Elden Ring, is that even interesting? Knowing that even if you put out the best thing that you've ever put out, less people are going to play it. What do you think about that?
I think that using Elden Ring as an example of third parties versus exclusives is not disingenuous, but certainly selective,
I
considering
think it's
just how
100%
particularly
genuous.
special.
All right.
Look. I get what you're going at for. I get what you're going at, Miles. But I think Elden Ring is light. Elden Ring is lightning in a bottle. Elden Ring is one of the biggest third-party game launches of all time.
Yes.
Whereas if you want to talk about subscriptions and, subscription and content and platform wars versus anything like that, yeah, Microsoft was able to call up Ubisoft, get a deal. They got Rainbow Six Extraction into Game Pass. But how many players did Rainbow Six Extraction get despite being a multi-platform game on Game Pass as well?
Yeah, not that many. Not 12 million, that's for
I mean,
sure.
not 12 million. I mean, it got a few million. It got
I
like
mean,
I think
yeah.
3 million
Yeah.
in the first month. Like it did probably a lot better than it would have due to Game Pass. Like probably a lot better than it would have otherwise. But still, Elden Ring has put From Software in the position of like a Bethesda Game Studios launch or a Call of
Yeah.
Duty launch or a Rockstar launch where it sells it's the thing that takes over for that time, and it is incredibly rare. It is ridiculously rare for a studio to be elevated into that position, but that is what has happened with From Software. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't think that is a fair comparison to most third-party games that are
Yes.
out there when we're
I'll
looking at
allow it. I'll
platforms.
allow it. It's just the obvious, most recent example of a third party release
Sure,
being the conversation, especially.
sure, but I do want to Say, however, we need to be careful about the conversation on social media not lining up with reality. Elden Ring is the biggest game out there, there's no question. But if you ask people, they'd say, oh, Aloy got slaughtered. Horizon Forbidden West, more like Horizon Forbidden Snore. Yet, Horizon Forbidden West was the biggest non Call of Duty PlayStation 5 launch yet. And that game was number 2 on the NPD charts. It still did really well.
Yeah.
And so maybe if you're a potential buyer for a new console, you're looking and going, huh, one console gets Elden Ring. One console gets Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West. Let me think about it. I'm not saying everyone does. I'm putting a hypothetical out there that, like, I think that is part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, a lot of us
you know.
fixate on the comparisons. There's a lot of people, again, who
Sure.
in bad faith are saying, that Elden Ring is a better game, that nobody cares about Horizon, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people do. Horizon reviewed well, Horizon sold well. Sure, there was a drop off the following week with Elden Ring in terms of sales carryover, but I mean, that's to be expected with that, how anticipated that game was. But I don't think that the lifetime sales of Horizon are doomed because it came out after Elden Ring by
No.
any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So I do agree that we do often fixate too heavily on the direct comparisons, and some of the direct comparisons aren't always fair or apt or meaningful. Yeah, I'll give you that. But again, Elden Ring obviously just the latest example of a third party game having far more potential to succeed than a first party game.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right, Sam. Well, I think that's gonna do it. It's been, we had some bigger conversations about Perfect Dark and the initiative and all that, but generally it's been a little bit slower on the news side. So we are going to wrap it up. For all the amazing people joining us live, thanks so much for tuning in. If you dug the show, if you had fun hanging out with us, hit that like button. If you listen on audio services, thanks so much. Sam, one more time for the beautiful people joining us, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Samuel Tolbert, right there, easy to find. Come yell at me, come agree with me, come do both. I love it. Love it all the same. And we can have some nice conversations. And you can find everything I'm writing over on Windows Central and its sister sites, Android Central and iMore. I think we're done covering Elden Ring. I think at this point, until From Software drops an expansion and then the grind starts up again. But stay tuned. We always have cool stuff waiting in the wings, and might be a little more quiet than February, but there's still good stuff to come in the weeks ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. Be sure to check out Sam's work. Be sure to check out Windows Central if you haven't. And yeah, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Have an amazing weekend, everyone, and we will catch you next week.